Hey, welcome everyone. I'd like to call to order the June 27th, 2023 SFO Airport Community Work Plan Subcommittee at 12:04 p.m. We are meeting in person at the Foster City Council Chambers Conference Room and virtually via Zoom. Joining us today are staff of the Roundtable, Kathleen Winford, Roundtable Coordinator, Angela Montes, Roundtable Administrative Secretary, and I believe virtually Eugene Rindell, HMMH Technical Consultant for the Roundtable. We also have with us virtually Bert Ganong, SFO Aircraft Noise Office Manager. And now Kathleen or Angela will advise us if anyone else is joining us that should be recognized. No one? All right.
Chair Sam Hindy.
Present.
Member Kai Eakin.
Present.
Member Terry O'Connell.
Present.
Member Al Royce.
Present.
Member Cecilia Taylor. Member Ann Schneider.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for being here. Moving on to public comment. This will be public comments for items that are not on the agenda. If you have any comments for item on the agenda, please wait till that item is brought forward. That I'm going to turn it over. Oh, if any member of the public, which I don't see anyone here, if you would like to speak, fill out the speaker slip and please give it to Ms. Montes. Ms. Montes will explain the public can participate in today's meetings.
Thank you, Chairman Hindy. For those attending in person, there are speaker slips on the table by the entry door. Please fill one out and indicate which agenda item you are speaking on or whether you are commenting on items not on the agenda. For those attending the meeting on Zoom video conference, we will use the raise hand feature in order to organize any public comments. During the general public comment period and for each item on the regular agenda, I will ask those members of the public who wish to comment to click the raise feature to speak on that agenda item. For those joining by phone, please press *9 to indicate your desire to speak. When you hear your name called, I will prompt you to unmute your microphone and inform you that you may begin speaking. You will have 2 minutes. Written comments that were submitted in advance will be acknowledged by staff during discussion of the appropriate agenda item. Thank you. And Chairman Hindy, I do not see any virtual hands raised for items not on the agenda.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Montes. I appreciate that. With that, then we're going to go ahead and move to the next item, which is regular agenda item number 1, action to set the agenda and approve the consent agenda.
I make a motion to set the agenda as printed.
Thank you, Member.
Second.
And seconded by Member Schneider. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries 5-0-0. Excellent. Thank you so much. With that, we're going to go to public comment on the consent.
Thank you, Chairman Hindy. Maybe we can give a couple seconds, but I do not see any virtual hands raised for consent. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving along to item number 2, work plan and budget discussion. Today is a part of the annual process required by the Roundtable bylaw. And we're going to start, I think the best way to start is to have a baseline on the 2022-2023 work plan and then move from that and build on it and see what we want to adjust and what we want to add and open it for discussion among all of us here and get recommendation for addition, deletions, and so forth. The revised work plan will be presented to the members at the August meeting for review and for vote. So we are simply going to be working the plan today and bringing it back to all the membership in August for their review as well as their vote. In addition, this committee has also been tasked with making a preliminary review of the 2023-2024 budget, which will also be presented to the membership at the August meeting. I would propose that we start with the work plan that's attached in our packet today. I believe it is on page 7. And yeah, starting 6 and 7.
Anybody need a packet that doesn't have one? Yes.
You need one? Okay, everybody's got one. Perfect. And then continue with the budget discussion and thereafter take public comments on both work plan and the budget. We have a public comment on this item now? No, till later.
Later.
So we're gonna go ahead and have our discussion at this point. If you would take your attention, and we're gonna go through these similar to what we did pretty much at the last meeting and go one by one, and we have edits here that as adjusted by staff, and we're gonna go over them and open it for discussion. So this is what I would like this really to be a free flow meeting where we're all having a discussion rather than being, you know, let's have a discussion about this and feel free, just raise your hand and go for it, you know. It's less formal, let's put it this way. Let's not make this, let it be informal, but let's get to work. So obviously, you know, the strategic or the work plan comes in from the strategic plan. The strategic plan is a multi-year document, but every year we go with the work plan and we take those items that we're going to be working on this current year or the coming year. Some of those items are multi-year, and then we will continue to work on them later. So that's why I propose to go on the 2023 to see what we had and what we could build on that, what we need to keep, what we need to delete, and so forth. That sounds good? Okay. So if I go down on the middle of the page under the strategic plan, goal 1, which is familiarize new congressperson. We would like to advocate that new congressperson and assembly person staff on all items in the work plan. The work plan, as it's stated, you have it there in 2023, and in red, you have the suggested edits by staff. Basically, the new verbiage would be the roundtable will brief 3 members of Congress who currently represent the roundtable geographic area and their staff, as well as other elected officials on aviation issues, especially the various factors that affect aircraft noise to residents, as well as on actions of the roundtable and the items in the roundtable work plan. That is the plan goal, the work plan item for the 2023-2024. Open it for discussion. Member Schneider. Actually, do you mind if I call you by first name?
First name is great.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah. And
okay. Especially for our new member, if you go back and read our original charter, it says noise and air pollution, noise and emissions. If you go to UC Davis's symposium, it's air, it's noise and emissions. If you look at the other roundtables around the country and the world, they get to include emissions. Now, I do come with an environmental degree, and to me, my worldview looks at multiple issues instead of separating them out, because when you separate things out, you may not have all the tools to help you get to what you want. So I think I've already met with Congressman Mullen when I was back in DC, but noise is FAA, emissions is US EPA. If we can add just and emissions, that gives us, when we have the time, the ability to pull in both those arguments, pull in both those agencies on that. And when I was in DC, I've got to tell you, I found the US EPA office on emissions extreme. They're still getting back to me. They still call me and check in versus the FAA. So I think it gives us more power by adding emissions.
Yeah.
And it's in our original charter.
yeah, like to hear from others on the comment or the topic.
I think that's a good idea to add emissions in, because it's something that does give us another tool in our toolbox. My comment was that, while this item, brief 3 members of Congress, I would say we need to add a little bit on an ongoing basis, because we don't want to just tell them what's going on and then shut the door. So we wanted to say that we're going to have ongoing conversations. So I would just think a small aside at the end of that we would be doing, letting them know, with progress reports. And so I think adding on an ongoing basis would state that we're going to reach out multiple times as needed.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? No, comments?
I guess I would add a couple thoughts. One, I think we're focusing more and more on health. And when you look at all these health studies, although some are focused solely on noise, which has been overlooked in prior studies, at least the adaptive studies, a lot of them now mix noise and pollutants in the same bucket when they do research. They'll add a segment about the impact of airplanes and airports, et cetera, and they'll add pollutants and emissions. So I think we ought to probably get ahead of the game, so to say, although we may be behind it, I don't know. And I do think we ought to add a section on emissions and pollutants. The only concern I have is making sure we have staff that can actually address it, because we haven't really addressed the noise concerns fully with all the new studies coming out that gives us a new avenue. So I don't want to dilute that effort too much, but I think it's hard not to add emissions in there. Everything you read nowadays about pollutants and climate change and the impact of the environment on our health. So I think I would support adding emissions %.
Yeah.
But I think we need to also give some thought to how we staff action around that. Rather than adding it, we ought to have some action plans around it too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was my instant. As Anne mentioned, I'm new, so I want to thank you all for helping me learn. My instant thought when you said emissions is you named it for me. It sounds good, but the devil is in the details. And so I was going to play devil's advocate and say it sounds good, but is there any reason we wouldn't do it? And that's really a staff question. And you named a reason maybe not to, and I don't know the answer.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
It's worth asking, but San Mateo County has the health department and they have an air specialist. Remember when the sky turned red or brown, wherever we were? So maybe we ask in terms of a specialist who actually understands, I can get technical here, the NOx's, the SOx's, but really I think we're looking at particulate matter, maybe black carbon, but I'm not so sure about black carbon. But, so let's see if we can get them to come, even that maybe we just at the beginning, make sure that we find a staff person, we CC them. And in terms of staffing, I think it's great on that. I know when I met with Congressman Mullen, he was still trying to figure out who was going to become his noise staffer. So let's see if we can ask our Assembly, Senate, and Congressman to make sure their staffer. We'd love another Kathleen, but no, Kathleen was amazing with Jackie Spear, but we need to fill that gap from them.
Yeah. So my take. Let me take the easier one first. That on ongoing basis, inform the representatives. I totally agree, but I think Anne just mentioned. The hope is obviously that they have a permanent representative from their office who gives them regular, even more regular than the roundtable on a quarterly or a monthly basis. They will, on ongoing basis. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, when you were Congresswoman Spear, you had a lot more between the meetings of the roundtable. You always this issue being brought, because that was your job at the time. So I'm assuming whomever would be the representative, I hope that would be the same approach to ongoing, given ideas even beyond it, I would imagine what the roundtable, but in the scope of what the discussion is and what the work plan is.
Although, honestly, Congresswoman Spear made this a real priority for her. Aviation noise was a priority for her. She used to be on the roundtable at one time in her early career and board supervisor. So she took this to heart, and she gave me carte blanche. It was a wide portfolio, and I was allowed to do. I think that's an exception. We can't really expect to have some replicated to that degree.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah.
I think, this could be a significant investment of time in results for us. I think maybe it might make sense to, rather than say we're going to do it, maybe put a little task force together to go through the pros and cons, the resources available, what the action items might be, and what the results we're looking for before we actually say we're going to do something. Maybe the first step is determine out what we should do and why we should do it and how we would do it and what resources are available.
You're referring to that mission.
I'm sorry.
You're referring to that
talking
mission.
about mission.
Okay, got it.
I'm sorry. The thing about the Congress, I fully agree. 3 new members. I'm told Kathleen told me the new region with the new membership. I had no idea.
Yeah.
The fact we had 2 new members.
So whatever it's worth, I had a brief conversation with the Congressman Mullen about this, and he mentioned being from South City. He served, I believe, on the roundtable at one point. He really wants to pay attention to this issue. So definitely, but I think that is a great idea, Terry, that to have more ongoing update, even if they have their representative. Basically, I think we should have, I don't know, quarterly, and like a report or the email.
It's probably not something that we need to put in the work plan, as far as how often we do it,
Yeah.
because I think it's really gonna depend on the interest. I mean, if we have a congressperson who is disinterested,
Yeah.
or doesn't have time, or has
Yeah.
other things on his plate,
Yeah.
we don't want to be wasting their time and our time, butting heads and just making them angry. So I think that how often we report or how often we engage really is going to depend on how receptive they are to our needs and wants. So I don't think in this step that we need to put it in writing or have a definitive amount of time. And perhaps when it comes to adding the health and pollutants portion of that, we put that further down in one of the subcommittees works, where we look at how we can integrate that and that kind of report into the overall work plan.
Yeah.
And it might need to start there because we need to figure out how we can do that.
Yeah.
We're starting to say, I thought we were so close. In terms, so I come from the recycling field, and in the early days, we only said recycling. So we forgot about composting and reuse. My job at the city of San Jose was to change the emphasis. And you change the emphasis sometimes by just little words. So everywhere in the document where it says noise and emissions, that's how, so even if I hear you, and I love that, but we also know we only have limited staffing, and already our committees meet so infrequently. Let's get it in the document, and then let's see how it evolves through the various work plans, right down to the monitoring subcommittee. Well, should we have some air emission data to go with it? Which frankly is something, as UC Davis panel told me, Millbrae's probably in a better position than any other city in the county in terms of emissions because of the winds. But so I'd like to see emissions stay in here but keep it throughout the document on there. I don't think, I love the task force. I don't think we need it just yet, but I will say Saul Miranda of Senator Becker's office has been trying to attend. It's hard because when we're this way, I can't see who else might be out there, but I can keep asking. Saul represents Northern San Mateo County for the senator, and I think if we continue to make those little, hey, Saul, we missed you.
Yeah.
Because this is complicated stuff and it takes a long time to absorb it. And we just keep asking, and I don't know who Assemblywoman Pappen will assign.
We will contact them, we'll figure all the logistics and detail, but so that's not no problem. I think it's important to continue to have an ongoing conversation with our representative. As far as emission, as important as it is, I totally concur. I think we have a more of a consensus here or an agreement that it's an important issue that we need to look into, but we have to kind of look into it more deeper a little bit before we kind of make a decision on it or put on some more further discussion. And I think for me, it's a staffing. I mean, I know we're dealing with the noise, which is a major issue as well. I'm not to minimize or to take away from the importance of emission, but also I'm cognizant of what we could handle. I want to make sure we're able to handle it before we go any further and commit to anything and say this is going to be on the same footing as noise. So that's going to take a while. If you're talking about a certain action or a certain initiative, one thing, and to make it on equal footing, and I'm not against it necessarily, but let's take a look and see is that possible, and if it is, what would it take to make it happen?
Yeah. I agree completely. I think we have to look at our resources and see I mean, it's almost like opening up a huge new topic. It's a huge new topic that we have not very considered. What I might suggest, and it's a good one, and I agree with Anne that it could potentially give us more leverage in certain items. So I think it's important that we have sight of that as a priority to look at. But what I'm suggesting right now might be to take a look at this about 10 months, 9 or 10 months from now, when we start putting the 4-year strategic plan together, because that's going to give us, because we're supposed to sort of be molded as part of the strategic plan for our work today. And I don't know that emissions is anywhere mentioned in the strategic plan, but it ought to be. Yeah. And so I'm suggesting maybe this is a topic that's best handled next year when we revise the strategic plan next year. Yeah, because the strategic plan is up 2024, right? It is. So. Yeah. So we have to, and we'll have to start. The strategic plan requires a lot more than just the work plan, a survey, and a lot of other things. So I would anticipate maybe starting the strategic plan process pretty much right after the first of the year, maybe around February. Okay. Yeah.
Can I just go backwards on that? So we have a legislative committee. We have bills moving through Congress. We are only approaching half of the argument when it comes with airplanes by not having emissions. So we are basically for the next year, and as the FAA gets to shuttle emissions over to the US EPA, and the two agencies, I'm sure I've said this at a roundtable, I tried to track down through all my contacts at Region 9, Region 3, where I have a relationship, and Washington, DC, and everybody points like this on that. So if we don't, emissions are in our original charter. I don't see how it's going to add any additional staffing, at least the first year. Let the staffing issue come back during the strategic plan, but give the legislative committee, and frankly, you know, if we start looking at asthma counts and how much asthma is going up, we need that tool now for legislation now. We need that tool now for the FAA reauthorization. But if we, and I've tried to bring emissions up several times over the last 7 years to get shot down every time, and it has weakened. I'm sorry, Carrie. It's weakened.
No, not at all.
It's weakened us even just to bring it up, because it's not technically, although it is in our charter. Somehow all of our predecessors before all of our time, emissions got dropped in there, and maybe it's when the Bay Area came. You know, we have air attainment levels. We were really bad. We got better. They may have thought the problem was solved. Well, the problem isn't solved.
I think that's a perfect item for discussion on the strategic plan, really, because if we haven't been doing it for whatever the reason in the past, right? I wasn't privy to those meetings or discussions.
None of us, all before our times.
But it would be great opportunity perhaps to bring it at the strategic plan discussion next year.
Oh, I just, I'm a little bit captivated by the lived experience of, if you put it there, it changes the thinking, and emissions is in the front page of the papers all the time. I do want to be protective of staff, which is, but I'm now thinking maybe it's good.
I mean, I appreciate that. I mean, for me, if we put it in the work plan, we have to work on it. And until we identify what it would take and the resources are available, then we just put in verbiage. I'd rather have verbiage that we will execute. That's my approach to it. Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
Except when I was in DC representing the roundtable, I couldn't talk emissions because it's not in our charter. So I'm back with the lobbyists, with the FAA, and can't talk about it. And if we want Congressman Mullen to get staff that understands noise and emission and air pollution, then we've got to ask for it. So I hear what you're saying on staffing. I honestly don't think that for the remainder of 23 and 24 and the current cycle with that it's going to be a huge amount of work for Kathleen or Angela. It's more what's going to come out of LegCom and the letters that we write, and it's simply dropping in a word. I've got 40 years of environmental policy work. I do not see this. It just gives us a tool to be able to speak up on it.
What if instead of just having it pollutants, we put it as noise and health. Health is covered by pollutants. It doesn't put any, we're already looking at some of the health studies when they come out. So if we just add that in, it's not going to add additional work, but it gives us another reach. With that,
If that's a compromise, I can see it, but again, look at all the other roundtables, noise and emissions. It puts us on the same place as Heathrow, which is doing leadership work. It puts us in the same place as Logan Airport leadership work. LAX.
I don't necessarily disagree. I honestly do not necessarily disagree with you. What I'm saying, if that is a discussion we want to have, let's have it at the strategic plan discussion.
I guess you're hearing that I only have a year and a half. And I've been waiting 8 years to try to fix something. So, I mean, if that's as best we can get, I'm disappointed, but I'd be open to help. If health is a compromise and we're already doing health on legislation, then I'm happy with health.
That would work.
because that would cover pollutants without locking us
Okay.
down to
Then I'm happy.
pollutants.
That would work.
And
And
that
just
would
as
go
a
into that.
footnote, there's nothing to preclude us. Let's say there's a bill or something about admission for us to chime in. If something really important, we believe, okay, we could add some value to it. We could chime in. It doesn't have to be in there.
I will say, as a historical note, I'm involved with voters, and most votes are white. And people who have their vote in South Beach versus people who have their vote in Brisbane, they have to have their votes cleaned much more often in Brisbane because it gets that black sooty
oily
acid, you know, it's like acid rain
Yeah,
on their boats,
Yeah.
and it etches into the fiberglass and
Yeah.
eats off their finishes. And, you know, when voters are saying, yeah, we moved from South Beach to Brisbane or vice versa, there is a noticeable difference because of our overflights. And that's, you know, historical nonsense, but it is true. I know it's true.
you're validating it's a valid concern
So-
that need perhaps to be somehow worked into our
So if they
plan.
fly over the bay instead of over communities, we know that crap is being dumped over the bay or the ocean instead of the communities.
Yeah.
And there is, from both climate change and health, a bigger emphasis on carbon black or black carbon, I think is the
See,
term.
I
Sorry.
happen to, number one, I agree this is a critical topic that we need to get included in our plan at some point in time. If it's in our charter already, then we ought to be putting some focus around it. I'm worried about saying that we're gonna do something and then not have any action items. And my experience on the SFO roundtable for years, we always talked about it, but we never said this is what we wanted. It wasn't until Sam and Ricardo came on and said, this is the specific things we wanted, that we actually got action. So when I talk to congressmen now and they ask me, what do you want? I'm not sure I know the answer to that. And so I think putting a strategic plan, getting some information built up, building awareness, coming up with concrete items that we want is pretty critical. And I didn't know you only had a year and a half, because I think you'd be critical to this. And we may want to explore having more citizen involvement in some of our subcommittees, at least, and not the roundtable. But I'm a little bit worried about putting it now, but it's not part of our strategic plan. And number two, I'm a little bit worried about putting something in that we've got no actions around, because I'm tired of talking to people saying, well, what have you done on noise? And it wasn't until 4 years ago that actually say, well, this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
We actually had something we could do, right? Ground-based noise, the night hush, the GBAS. And I don't want to get emissions, people saying, well, you got it in there, what you said.
Yeah.
And swindle dressing, you guys are just
But
cool
health,
with this.
but health, I think.
I like your idea, 100%. As long as you say, I agree with you.
Let me give you the.
I would like to wrap this up.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give you the floor
Because it's
before
gonna-
I wrap up, but I would like to wrap it. So
Yeah.
Ann, and let's move on.
No, where there is an actual item. So Millbrae has hired our own lobbyist because transportation issues in general. And one of the things that she found that governor, even in a tight budget, would like to spend money on is monitoring devices that collect data. So CARB does not have any monitoring devices in San Mateo County except one in North Fair Oaks. So we could, under the monitors, be asking for, and honestly, I think these would be under the gap departure. It would be under the runway 28 departures, especially the lower the plane, dirt falls like this. you know, so we could capture that. So that's a specific action item
Good one.
underneath the monitoring devices that would begin to give us the data to make, you know, real
That's a
good
great
decisions, data-driven decisions on that. And it's real, and our lobbyist is already working in Sacramento on that.
I'm
And
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I understand your time. If there are action items that you think ought to be addressed, let the legislative committee know about it. I will guarantee you'll have a receptive audience. And we can put it.
Okay, I'm done.
Okay.
No, absolutely, no, definitely, I mean, like I said, something comes up. So moving on, next item on the strategic plan goal 2, review and comment on aircraft procedures. And if you look at the work plan item that we have before us, I don't need to read all that, but you can see number 1, the technical working group will monitor and evaluate the implementation of night hush departure, downbound transition. You have the verbiage in there. Any comments or concerns, addition, deletion on this document?
If I could just explain the change that was made here.
Sure.
This was written at a time when night hush was not finalized.
Mhm.
So it had to be, it was in process and there were some steps that needed to be taken. So that the changes were made are, we now have the night hush. And what are we going to do about it now? Well, we're going to keep an eye on it to make sure they're flying it. And we're going to do our best to encourage and advocate for expansion of the hours of the night in which we are allowed to use it. So that's what the intent is of this.
Thank you for that clarification. We moved to a different stage in our night hush, so therefore the verbiage change. Any questions or comments? Yeah.
On page 8, number 2, when I read this, and if you've followed the Chronicle lately, there seems to be an increase of go-arounds. So I'm adding this new term to my vocabulary, and the go-arounds tend to fly up over Millbrae, over Pacifica, and sometimes come right down, it seems like over Hillsborough, because that's what I'm seeing, because they're right over my house.
So let me make sure I'm following page 8, number 2.
Page 8, number 2, when it talks about shortcuts.
Okay.
So when I was reading
yeah,
that, I go
vector.
shortcuts.
It's vector.
Vector.
Yeah.
Right, no, I know that, but it made me think about the go-arounds. And then the Chronicle has done this series of how many go-arounds. I thought a lot of it was because runway 1 left was closed and, you know, there's more planes moving around on the tarmac. But I wondered if there's a place in here to insert go-arounds. And the action item would be,
way different.
well, no, it's way different, but it's a data point that's definitely impacting a lot of the Pacificans who call me, I think, are being hit by the go-arounds on that. So where would it fit?
Go-arounds or the missed landings or the.
Yeah, can I give you some background on this? Because this is a very important topic, both to the residents and to the passengers and to the pilots. And I don't know if you know what my background is, but I retired after 30 years as a captain for United Airlines. So you'll forgive me for my passion on some items. This is a safety item. And go-arounds are initiated for a number of different reasons, some of which are under the control of the pilot, some are under the initiation of the tower. So there are go-arounds that are routine, and ones we read about in the papers are less than routine. But any attempt, but this is a critical phase of flight, just like all the critical phases of flight. And you're coming down to land, and at a certain altitude, you, the pilot or the tower, tells you to go around. And for whatever reason, aircraft on the runway, dog crossing the runway, moose. I mean, it happens for all different reasons at all different airports. But at that point, the tower is structured, and they have a set procedure. So at San Francisco, we've got 28 left and 28 right, which is our predominant landing airport runways, and they're right next to each other, close by, and they're parallel to each other. And so what you want to do is you want to get these airplanes up and then turn them away from each other. Because we do a lot of side-by landings. So the tower has implemented a procedure that they follow, and they will tell you, climb to 5,000 feet. If you're talking this one, turn left to this heading. You're talking this one, turn right to this heading. This is not something that is done with any particular ability to do it over a certain city or a certain area. It's done because it's the airspace requiring it. So it's very limited, and it's an important to do. It's very important to do and to take into consideration. And I would tread lightly on the topic of go-arounds.
Again, for the new member, we haven't stressed it at roundtables for years, but each of us as a roundtable member are supposed to be the liaison to our communities and help them understand what's going on. I'm not saying stop go-arounds. I am saying when you read the director's report, or if you've got, like for anything on SMC alert, there is absolutely no information. And what I get, because most of the go-arounds are going to be over Millbrae, is what the heck is happening? Well, that's what it feels like. I don't know if they're going out over the bay, but I can tell you, especially in the summertime, in the park down the street, I've had airplanes flying about 200-300 feet over Central Park with our children playing everywhere. And I get the phone calls. So the action from this, the deliverable from this, is simply in the monthly report, say where the go-arounds were, and that helps me explain that this is a safety function. Now, I will tell you, ever since there was that missed flight down in LA where they had to fly back to the airport and they dumped their fuel on a school playground with kids and teachers in there, I live in fear of that every time the planes are over my Central Park and over the 2 schools that it goes over right there.
Of course, that was not a go-around.
No, it was I know, but the reality is at least for the close-in communities, we are seeing go-arounds and the public doesn't understand. So let's just be honest and put it in the report and say, these are go-arounds. They happen. Although if you read the Chronicle articles, they're a little bit concerned because they seem to be going up. I don't have that concern. I want the data so that I can explain to my people. And as the representative from Millbrae, when you look at the reports and you look at where flights go, it never reflects the reality of my residents. And I think that is unfair and unjust. So simply saying go-arounds are a necessary safety precaution, just be honest about it. Put it in the report.
I'm sorry, I didn't know we were talking about the report. I thought we were talking about.
Well, I'm trying to do a deliverable, but here, this whole section is mainly flight. Sorry, I've got to get back to my computer. And it just made me think of go-arounds, which we ignore entirely in terms of discussion.
Well, maybe that is someplace, because I did see that we have revamping the director's report in another section.
Let me hear from Bert a little bit. Bert.
But I'm sorry, I'm just really tired of excuses.
Thank you, Chair Handy.
I'm not saying go around as an excuse.
Yes.
I did want to, correct some errors in reporting of aircraft 300-400 feet. They're at least 3,000-4,000 feet, more likely 4,000 to 5,000. Yes. Yeah. On go-arounds, I have the records I can show you.
Well, then it's something else flying over Central Park, low.
It's not SFO aircraft.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we're done with 1, right?
Done with 1.
And on number 2, what we're talking about here is the non-safety vectoring. Please explain that to us. So I'm going to be referring to you, your staff. I'm going to have you explain these items if needed. Sure. Otherwise, we'll go to them.
Vectoring is one of those complex flight issues. There's good vectoring and there's necessary vectoring. And sometimes there's vectoring that results in increased impact on residents. So vectoring is not a monolithic thing. What this talks about is non-safety vectoring. If there's 2 airplanes in the sky that are getting too close, the air traffic controller needs to do safety vectoring, turn one away from the other. Perfectly understandable, but that's not what we're talking about. Safety always comes first. But there are times when in the middle of the night with no other airplanes around, you will occasionally see an airplane that starts on a procedure and then it makes a turn off of the procedure over residential areas at 2 or 3 in the morning. As a matter of fact, let me see if I can show you. Yeah, this is a good example. Andrew, can I share my screen?
Yeah.
Okay. if you look at this bottom right hand, can you see my cursor? Okay. You can see, if you could find San Francisco Airport down here, you can see this person took off on, it's probably one right, I can't see which of the ones it is, takes off, comes around, and, oh, I should preface this by saying that this took place, as you can see in the upper right-hand corner, at 1 a.m. in the morning. And this, I'm not saying that this is a violation of the night because it's outside the night hours. I'm just saying it's an example of what appears to be a non-safety vectoring. Because as you can see here, there's very few other airplanes in the sky. So this airplane's taken off, comes up over the lower southeastern San Francisco, comes around and just comes right down the peninsula at 1 in the morning, going over Millbrae, Burlingame, blah, blah, blah. So just that's an example of giving a shortcut to this airplane, which is going to, looks like Houston. So that's something that we should be monitoring. We should be monitoring non-safety vectoring that impact residents at night.
Thank you, Company. So this would be a new item that will be added to the work plan. Any concerns with this? I think that is an important issue. Vectoring, and especially at night over residential areas, should not be the case unless it's a safety vectoring. That's really the summary of it. Any issues, any concerns? Okay, thank you. Number 3, you could see the verbiage change instead of just basically talking with the technical consultant, but also advocate to the FAA, SFO, and the airlines, especially at night when aircraft are landing west, to use 28 right at all times unless they don't do all approaches or what have you. So that's the only additional who would we talk to and who would we advocate for rather than just the consultant. We're adding the stakeholders in there.
Are those the cargo flights we're talking about primarily?
Any and all.
At all times, so outside of the 1 to 5 hours.
Right. This would be, and we haven't defined nighttime here, but there's unfortunately several definitions and different regulations but something akin to 10 or 11 at night till 6 or 7 in the morning. Okay. In that neighborhood.
Any concerns?
So is it a redundancy or am I just reading it because it's read for arrivals and landing? Aren't all arrivals landing?
An arrival should end in a landing, unless it's a goal. Yeah, but to your point, an arrival is like the procedure you're flying, and a landing is touching down.
Ground.
And so a lot of times at San Francisco, if you do an approach to it right, they will allow you to sidestep and come over and land on 28 left. The benefit to the aircraft and the passengers and the airlines is that it allows you to get to the gate quicker. And if it's done well inside of the bridge, that sidestep probably doesn't create noise to other people, but without getting too nitpicky, that's the thing. You want to make them arrive and land on 28 right.
Okay.
That's
okay.
Easiest.
I understand now.
Yeah.
I just wasn't sure if it was a double entendre.
What do you mean by inside the bridge? You mean after it's passed over the San Mateo Bridge, then it can move over? What we've never really monitored then, and it's predominantly hotel. I don't think Burlingame's planning any residential out there. If they are moving their plane over, again, it's so much quieter on arrival than a departure, but it is going to have an impact on all of the hotels in Burlingame and Millbrae.
It's very well made.
We've just never anything we've looked at. It's not high on my list on there, but it's not free.
So this is for arrivals and landings onto it right at night.
Okay.
Not just possible.
Okay. So moving on to number 4 in there, we just adding the verbiage of make recommendation, advocate to FAA and SFO. Similar to what we had last year, just adding that little phrase in there.
Okay, it might show up under ground-based noise. It might be under number 4. Runway 1 left has been shut down. It has been heaven at my house. And Kathleen had sent out a map about where we might put the temporary monitors to try to pick out where the low frequency noise moves on a 45-degree angle. What I don't know, and it would be worth studying, is if more of the nighttime flights took off on one right, who are they impacting? Because if you look at that map that Kathleen made, which I can pull up here, it opens up questions. Is that something that can be handled here? Or is it something that goes under monitors and ground-based noise?
I think this is a fairly general topic that would take into account what you're pointing out, as well as any other movement of an aircraft that's creating noise.
Okay, so my question is allocated to ground-based noise. We only meet a couple of times a year. It's really hard to keep momentum that way when you're meeting so infrequently. And I want to give ground-based noise time to legislation, which we need to stay on top of. But getting something that actually goes to the technical working group and or to the full roundtable with enough time allocated on the agenda to get into the details. We don't get into the details on ground-based noise issues. We report out a little bit, we talk about it, and here it is 3.5 years later after the study, and we're really just getting to the monitors now. So if it needs to be here so it can actually show up at the roundtable meetings, then I'd like to see something a little more specific.
Are you recommending runway left?
I only know how lovely it was for 6 weeks, and I still think that more flights are possibly using one right to take off, especially those horrible Amazon flights at 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning. They've been quieter, but then again, the weather's warmer. There's just so many variables that it makes it tough to solve problems when you've got so many variables that can impact noise. I wish I could say yes, but it's kind of needs more study, needs more work, needs a discussion with all of us at the table, being able to say what if. And we just don't seem to have a time with ground-based noise meeting a couple times a year.
And I wonder if this what you're saying is more appropriate to be under. This is, I think, goal 2, number 8A, which is working with the technical consultant. The ground-based noise subcommittee will evaluate operational changes that will help with ground-based noise for close-in communities at nighttime.
It could.
I mean, that's exactly what that says.
It could. It's just that ground-based noise issues don't make it to the full roundtable.
I don't know about that, but because
only because I open my mouth, Sam, and I feel like I have to fight every minute that ground-based noise gets any attention at the roundtable, and then we spend hours on GBAS.
I mean, with all due respect, you have your time for your reports, number one. Number two, if you have action items that you want the roundtable to act on, as a subcommittee, you could definitely bring those. There's nothing to preclude you from that. You know that.
So ground-based noise has asked to bring the discussion of noise metrics to technical working group where we have enough time to talk about the metrics. And I've been asking at least for 6-7 months, if not years, to get that on there, and it's not happening. So if it needs to be in our goals someplace else where there's a better avenue, where it doesn't have to feel like I'm fighting all the time. Again, I'm gone in 1.5 years, and I am the loudest voice for looking into metrics with loving out. I am trying to protect all of us. If we don't have better metrics, we can't help anybody.
No, I understood. No one is arguing about the metrics. We're talking about if I'm responding to what you had said. And if that is the case, I'm not okay with that. If you, the ground-based noise subcommittee, wants to bring something to the roundtable and you're not able because of certain hurdles, I'm not okay with that. I want you as a subcommittee to do your work and to recommend stuff for the entire membership to do and for them to have a discussion and take action on. I'm not aware of any of those situations.
I appreciate that. So maybe we'll work on that process.
So in a way, piggybacking on that, I'm not sure this is the right spot for it, but I would like to see something that comes to either the technical working group or to ground-based noise or to something else, where we really have a discussion on a NEAM and its capabilities and what it can do for us on actually finding out where the real noise is. And, you know, I see a couple places where a name is mentioned and it's in the ground-based noise section. But I think that we need to have it brought into somewhere in the general work plan where we could really find out what a NEM can do for us in really diagnosing where the issues are, because it gives us so much more information, but we're not using it effectively right now.
Does that belong in the director's report?
It might be in the director's report.
That's
It might be that we as a body need to have an evening where we talk about, I mean, we had a lot of people at our last meeting who were new that were talking about SEL and CNEL and things, and it's like, oh, well, SEL is just a lesser version of CNEL. And so I think that with the ANEM capabilities and that we can get the information through ANEM, that we need to have some sort of topic in this document that we address ANEM and noise metrics separately in the group. You know, for one meeting where we just delve into it, and whether that's a special meeting or a subcommittee or however we want to do it, but where we can really find out what ANEM can do for us.
Can I,
let me, is Jean out with us? Let me ask Jean if she's available.
Oh, I don't have to let
What, no. Hi, Jean.
What did you want to ask me?
how we could put something in our work plan to really find out what ANEM can do for us and what characteristics and that we'll be able to learn, and how we get it into the director's report where it means something. And I think it needs to be, all the different noise metrics need to be looked at as a whole within the entire group, so everyone sort of understands what the capabilities are and how that might help us moving forward.
Yeah, so I think the first step is to have Bert explain in probably a technical working group meeting the workings of ANEM, because that only goes so far into the discussion of metrics. And then after we understand ANEM, we then take on, you know, the metrics discussion, I think, after that, because I think we're going to find that ANEM only goes so far into that discussion. We probably want to dive even deeper than that. But I think technical working groups probably the best subcommittee to handle those discussions and then take the results to the roundtable.
Okay, so then we'd want to put it into the technical working group section. I know my residents really feel that the ANEM numbers prove something that the CNEL does not. I don't know enough to say what it's proving or not, and I'm not sure how we get it into a format where we can show what's really going on, because it gives us, it certainly identifies more flights, but how else it's going to help us, I don't know.
Okay. I think.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jean. I think we could do that. We could put the ANEM on a discussion for a meeting at a technical working group.
Yeah.
We got that. Perfect. Thank you.
Through the chair, the other part, it's not just ANEM, Terry is spot on, it's and above.
Okay.
To throw in the and above, which Ms. Yapley is trying to help explain to us. So if we could do that deep dive, the working group is the right format for it.
Yeah.
Remember years ago when NextGen first came, we could really dive into details.
No, certainly. I think those are valid discussions and important topics to have.
And I think also and perhaps we call it a special workshop of the technical working group, where we can have more back and forth with the public, so that they can share their hopes, expectations, dreams, and unborn children, just like anybody else at the table. And so, you know, I think that it would be important to have at least one working group or study session, instead of calling it a technical working group. It could be a study session where the public is more involved.
I think this topic definitely worthy of having such, because we talk about noise metrics and how could we all of us, I think, as a group, we talk about how the current metrics are not adequate of reflecting the actual noise that we all hear and our residents hear. So if we need to, I have no problem. I think that's a great idea, actually, to have a study session to where
You know, and that might
just
add a few
focus
$100
on that.
to our budget somewhere here and there. But, you know, to have it as a special study session that
Dedicate a
maybe
couple
we do
hours
it
at least
in the
to just that.
late afternoon or early evening so that we can really delve into that and see what's gonna make a difference on the director's report.
So that would be the primer for all of us on this. not just-
Well, I think that's, yeah, I mean, you'd want to have Jane there giving us full understanding before we toss
Before we
out
start the
ideas.
discussion.
Yeah,
Right.
because
Yeah.
we need to know more before we can opine.
When Elizabeth was chair, there were a number of technical working groups that she and I were the only roundtable members at. They were in Millbrae. They were much more informal. They were much more back and forth. And I think our regular public attendees would really appreciate that. And they have a lot to add. And again, Millbrae, we're happy to host the space
Thank you, we appreciate
and
that.
happy to get it streamed if we need it that way.
All right, so just in the interest of time, because we still have half an hour, we still have a lot of stuff. Yeah, so an hour passed, believe it or not. Item 5 and 6, no changes, they just got moved from goal number 3. So unless there's any comments on them, I'm gonna move on. Those were simply carried over from last year.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, number 7. The roundtable will pursue developing 2 of the 3 roundtable GBUS suggestions that were initially deemed not appropriate to GBUS. I think we touched on those several times at the regular meeting and the technical working group as well. Basically, the idea is those that were deemed infeasible by or not in the scope of the GBUS team, that we're going to be pursuing those through the FAA. Any questions on that?
By the way, this was all the agenda and the details available to the public
Yes.
before, so we have no public comment on that, right?
So we're gonna take public comments.
But we didn't get any advance.
Oh, we have one, I think, got emailed to us by Ms. Biapley.
It was in support of this?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, we have one public comment from Ms.
Oh,
Biapley
no,
that
no.
I'm aware of.
No, I just was trying to put out the 3
Oh, okay.
chief best things that people. have
No, I'm
questions.
talking about received via email.
Yes, we did receive, and I thought it was on item
It's next.
line.
Not yet.
It's not
Well,
yet.
once
Yeah.
we get to it,
Okay.
we'll.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Right.
Okay,
Sam, on page 8C,
Yeah.
I just was, when I read opposite direction ODOs, I wasn't quite sure what it meant.
Are we there yet?
Yeah,
Are we-
I mean, I can guess, so maybe we,
We finished that?
You're talking about item 8 on page 9.
no, item 7, number C on page 8.
Oh,
It talks about opposite direction operations.
Is that reverse flow?
Was that, so I figured it wasn't reverse flow when I read it, so I was confused. We might want to clarify.
we could.
Only because I didn't know what it meant.
It's opposite direction operations. It's basically when they're in any airport, it's say everybody's taking off this
A
way.
10 and a 28,
Yeah, the 10 and the
a
20.
10 and a 28, okay.
So if, with regard to the C one, as I understand it, there's some issues on that particular safety topic of opposite direction operations that is underway in a study of some kind, the results of which will be pertinent to the ability to engage on the third.
I think it's great. I read it and I go, I don't know what that means. So if I don't, or we don't at this table, how will the rest of so many new roundtable members?
We're going to be posting it. We have a glossary that goes out. So the glossary is still on. all
Yeah,
of our
sometimes we have to
packets?
go back and read it.
Not in the packet.
Okay, we have a glossary that
All
has
right.
to go out in the packets, and we'll make it available so that people have that again.
Number 8, subcommittee words, basically it stayed intact other than adding the word as appropriate on the first line and on the second line and or roundtable communities. Other than that, everything remained intact. Any questions? Thank you.
That was number 8.
Seeing none, that was number 8.
Then we,
Go ahead.
um,
Maybe you have additional.
There was, I would just suggest, after A, B, C, D, and E, that would say, as you see, the D above says the roundtable will monitor options for redirect southern arrivals, bodega server pirate arrival procedures. I'm suggesting that we should actually be monitoring operations for all San Francisco departures and all San Francisco arrivals. Why not? Instead of just picking out a few. If that's makes sense.
So this is on D, 8D,
Well,
and then
actually,
right after it, we could add another
8E.
8E, which says the roundtable will monitor options for all SFO departures and arrival procedures. Basically broadening the scope, if you will, but not taking anything away. Any objection to that?
Sounds good.
Seeing none, thank you. Okay, moving on to strategic plan goal number 3, which is address airport operation noise. And for the work plan, you see the first item, review and provide feedback on SFO strategic plan, development plan, and noise action plan. Include environmental justice and the feedback. That section, that goal has moved intact basically to number 2. Nothing really has changed in there. Any concern?
Actually, something really huge has changed. So SFO and SF Planning Commission approved the final EIR SFO sea level protection plan. Now I'm not doing it at any rate, they've approved it. It's going to include 9 to 15 foot walls all the way around for sea level rise. It's going to include filling at least down by Millbrae and Burlingame 20 acres of mud flats and replacing that with hardscape. And in the EIR, it talks a lot about construction. SFO's EIRs tend to talk a lot about construction and not about ongoing operations. So it's going to take them until 2034 to get all of this done, but it's going to have a noise impact. And from my perspective, and it's going to have impacts. What they are is not really clear when you read the EIR on that. So I'd just like to have added the sea level rise work that SFO is going to do. It left one shoreline, didn't comment on the EIR. The county didn't comment on the EIR. My city manager and I commented on it, and basically SFO ignored every single thing,
So
which meant any noise impact, any air pollution impact, any impact at all was ignored.
So what are you suggesting? Action?
I would just add under the
not just adding, I'm sorry. What do you suggest? Let's say we added, what would the SFO?
Well, I think at minimum, in a perfect world, Sam, and I know we don't have enough time at our meetings, but SFO would have brought their sea level rise work to the roundtable and talked about it and talked about the implications. It's done now. The EIR is done. Now, one of their planners said, oh, just because it's in the EIR doesn't mean that's how we'll build it. Then why do an EIR? But it's there on that. So maybe what we do at roundtables is we require them to come in and tell us exactly what these things are going to do. Now, I don't know which reach they're starting with. I think they're starting over by South City and then eventually working around 28. And the 20 acres that I walk to are reach 13, 12, 13, 14, 12, 13, 14, the ones around there. But they should come out and tell us, because every operation is now going to have these 5 foot thick, 9 foot tall to 4. I couldn't quite hear it, at 12 to 15 foot walls, steel plates filled with grout in the middle. I'm not using the right word. What's going to happen? Who knows what's going to happen? But we know that inert surfaces bounce sound. And there is zero mitigation, zero for that. But the only mitigation that SFO has talked about is they're going to go look at other parts of California to restore the bay that they're taking away. So that's not so much a roundtable, but the noise is an issue.
Would you like to add to one of the work plans something to receive and discuss sea level rise implications?
I think that's lovely.
And can we do that would that be distracting from your ground-based noise? Is it gonna, I mean,
It's
I'm
gonna
just
be ground-based noise. It's also gonna be in flight after 5 feet, but yeah. It
But-
could, but
I think that it might be that, you know, as appropriate, engage SFO on sea level rise projects. And maybe we could just leave it at that and put that in your work plan. It may be that it's gonna be bumped down the road because they aren't gonna be ready to do that for 6 months or a year or 5 years. But maybe if we just put that line in your work plan, and see how it flows, because we don't have any specifics on what we're going to do. But until we get some information from SFO on what their anticipation is gonna be, we're not gonna know.
it's a place to start. You can obviously tell I'm at my frustration with end. I come from an environmental background and I looked at every SFO's EIR, and every expansion they do, there is zero mitigation to the close-in community. Okay, a little window insulation. That doesn't let you go out and have a backyard barbecue on that. Every expansion on there, and they are a huge industrial complex. And we are a little city fighting Goliath. And in fact, SF Planning said, well, we don't even have to pay attention to local government's general plans. How heartbreaking is that? So yeah, it can come from ground-based noise. I would like for the whole county to know, because Millbrae and other close-in communities, but Millbrae especially, from transportation, all sources, bears the brunt for the region. And it's in high-speed rails EIR where it says, Millbrae, you'll suffer and your schools will suffer, but you need to do it for the regional good. And that has been our history. It is our very roots, our very formation.
Chime me in on that one too. But
You know, and at some point we have to say, you can't keep growing ad nauseum. I would have said SFO. Have you heard of managed retreat? Pacifica is being told, my neighborhood I grew up in, managed retreat.
I understand,
you know,
but just so we remain focused on what we're talking
well,
about.
I would like in this area where it's talking about address airport operation noise, add in their sea level work.
Well, basically,
At least then it can come back to the full roundtable at some point, maybe after it goes to ground-based noise.
Go ahead, Catherine.
I'm wondering if sea level rise is already, we're listing here the strategic plan, the development plan, and noise action plan.
Yeah.
And I'm only thinking that the sea level plan is either the strategic or the development plan, it seemed to me.
Yeah.
I was gonna suggest, I don't
Maybe we could
mind,
ask Bert or.
yeah. I'm okay putting it in there, but I wouldn't, to me, this is more of a San Mateo County issue. Because it's broader than just the airport, the sea level rise.
And I wish they would be responsible, but they're not.
And maybe it's appropriate for us to send a letter to them asking if they can take action on behalf of the community in the county.
I would love that.
And I think, no, I totally agree. And I think, you know, there's a lot of stuff us as cities we have to do on our own. The roundtable might be the perfect place and perfect venue for aircraft noise and related stuff. Other stuff, as frustrating as they are, and as much as we wanna, you know, speak about them at every forum that we have disposable before us, we definitely can't speak about them. But the question is, what can we do from our jurisdiction or from what we charted to do? I really truly hear what you're saying, and I hear what you're saying, especially when you're talking about the noise impact on transportation on Melbourne, from whether it's Caltrain, whether it's BART, whether it's the airport, whether it's all these kind of things. My only reaction to that, first and foremost, I hear you. Second is, I want to hear from you more as to what we as a roundtable could do and take really action that will have an impact on your community.
So SFO moved runways 450 feet and 250 feet closer to Millbrae. Common sense, an idiot would say that's going to increase noise. SFO Roundtable didn't comment at all. It is a noise function. They could masquerade it as a safety function. They did not get their ability to move the runways out into the bay. They lost that in the 90s. So they did it another way by moving the runways forward. And this roundtable and the county, who else talks about noise? No other entity talks about noise other than us. So when they keep getting to do my city manager said they were taken out on a tour to build yet another brand new terminal. I think it's Concourse H. And my city manager and I are arguing that. But that's going to be more of a San Bruno noise issue, but it is going to be more airplanes
So no problem.
on that. So when do we keep handling, in my world, noise is an end of a pipe problem. We're not solving it at the beginning. You solve the problem up front by saying, no, you can't move the runways 450 feet closer to Millbrae.
So that's not what we're talking about now.
But that's
We're talking
noise.
about
But
that.
here we are. They're going to build walls, big inert walls that are going to bounce sound badly.
Well,
And what are we going to do? Talk about it after it happens?
here's what I'm going to tell you to that. They have to build the wall. I'm not defending.
No, they
them.
don't. They can manage retreat.
Well,
They could
okay.
build walls like O'Shaughnessy Dam has, the walls that move up and down, which I just came back from
And
O'Shaughnessy
again,
Dam.
those could be addressed on response to the EIR. They could be addressed by the city of Millbrae to SFO. Those, with all due respect, I don't know how this could be an SFO roundtable advocacy.
It's going to increase noise.
But
Aren't
we
we
don't
there to
know that
protect?
yet.
I
I
think,
mean, we don't know that.
here's my thought on it. I think we can include it in our work plan as and I think it should come from the ground-based committee, subcommittee, as a recommendation to the roundtable, and then let the roundtable debate. If that's the best course of action.
Okay.
That sounds good to me. We gotta really move on.
Yeah, I have a hard stop at 1:30 because I've got a 1:30 meeting in Brisbane, but they're waiting.
Yeah.
Some recommendations from the
We'll have an
ground
overplane helicopter take you there.
Yeah, right.
Chairman, just for the record, we did want to note that this is the public comment that was submitted by public member Darlene Gapley
Okay.
for goal number 3 on page 9.
Okay.
Item 2, would you like me to read it for the record? It was circulated to the members, but also posted on the website.
Okay, this under goal, should you explain goal 3?
Yes, item 2.
Okay.
So it reads,
Right.
you are on the 99-yard line. Please consider making the following insert to item 2. The Roundtable Ground-Based Noise Subcommittee will complete recommendations on airport rules and regulations, noise, airport directors reports metrics to include C-weighted noise and above from 45 to 85 dB in 5 dB increments. In the director's report, airlines using gates that only face away from closing community. See where a mean and C-weighted fit within these goals. Why? C-weighting is not enough by itself. It must be combined with and above to be of value to accurately understand and represent the noise experienced by residents. As an example, for one of the SFO RT cities, Millbrae, monitor number 9, no, this monitor does not pick up the worst noise in Millbrae, shows why and above is needed. For the March 2023 report, monitor number 9 went from 14 events using ANONs to 143 using ANIs. The DNL only decreased 2 dB from DNL 52 to DNL 54. DNL does not calculate the total number of single events like and above does. And above versus DNL better reflects the noise impact and reports the 143 events. With my suggested insert, the director's report for all cities with monitors would state and above using C-weighted from 45 to 85 dB and 5 dB increments. This is what the current FAA's noise policy review is about, asking what other metrics beyond DNL are needed for decision-making and what the threshold should be. And above at a specific dB level using C-weighting. Without reporting and above at different increments, you will not understand your impacts, nor will you be able to advocate for what is needed.
Okay, thank you, Angela. Let me go to Gene, if Gene could kind of give us his technical input on this.
Yeah, hello. Yeah, I think there's been a lot of attention to and above recently. It's probably worth considering to add to this section, not only a mean and C-weighted, but also and above. I'd fall short of putting the actual levels that she recommended. I think you need to evaluate what are the right levels of and above for your communities. But that could be part of the discussion we'd have also on metrics in the technical working group.
Is that something we could work into our ANEM discussion workshop kind of program where we can look at that and get a better understanding of what those metrics would mean for us?
Yeah, I think from what I'm envisioning and what I'm hearing from you and others, is really have the study session talk about different metrics and how they mean and what is better used, what is better that we will be advocating for that will reflect what we are really hearing, regardless what that encompasses. Okay, so it will be broad. But for this, what I think, I don't know, I'll ask Kathleen if we could add some verbiage like on the third line, kind of, to take that into consideration behind after the weighted noise, but and above and from, let's say, 45 dB and 5 dB increment. For that,
I think Ms. Gapley had the verbiage here from and above from 45 to 85 dB and 5 dB increments. But what I heard Jean say was that the specifics of this 45 to 85 and 5 degree increments might be something better taken up after we've had
maybe that we just put in the anem and the N and the N and above, and leave out the specifics so that we can figure out those details as the committees meet.
Sounds good to me. Are we okay on that? Everybody on board?
C-weighted, so they would read director report metrics to include C-weighted, weight, and above in the director's report.
Okay, thank you. All right, so moving on to strategic plan 4, lobby for aircraft noise reduction.
Real quick, if I could.
Sure.
I had a comment on the previous section to address Ann's concern. I'm wondering if we could just simply add environmental documents to that list of what the roundtable reviews. Because I think if that was in there, you would have had the environmental document that she was talking about without being specific to the sea level rise.
I'd be happy with that.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jean.
Say
that again.
I didn't hear that.
He was referring back to the earlier document.
The sea level.
On work plan item 1 under strategic plan goal 3, environment and environmental documents at the very end of that first paragraph.
Correct. So it says now review and provide feedback on the SFO strategic plan, development plan, and noise action plan. I would include in there environmental documentation or documents as well.
That works. You okay with that? Sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so again, strategic plan goal 4, lobby for aircraft noise reduction. The work plan item, receive regular reports from noise, the national organization, and the record reports and other sources to ensure sound controlled environment regarding federal legislation and action. Nothing in there has changed on that one other than what I just mentioned.
Yeah, well, we didn't talk about that.
Huh?
Did we want to talk about in the floor? Yeah.
I mean, adding 4,
9, top of page 10.
I think that's it.
so yours.
On the work plan item.
Mm-hmm.
You want to take it?
Oh, I just, since we received so much information from a number of different third-party vendors, if you will, reputable sources, I just thought we should broaden this up a little bit and just say to, instead of receiving from noise, which is great, we could just say obtain reports and updates from knowledgeable aviation third parties such as noise, airport noise reports, which we get periodically, and others as appropriate.
I like that better. To be honest, after watching noise perform when we were at the National League of Cities at the airport roundtable, when Emily Tranter said we should not use SFO for any reason to set FAA standards, I have real concerns about spending $4,200 on noise. And I do think that the people who put together the UC Davis symposiums, and this goes to Al's comment of bringing in more Darlene Yapley's, she's just a tremendous asset. Turns out her group is not a 501c3 yet, But if we could bring on a public member like that do their homework, I know that's opening up a whole other thing, but I like your thing about at least providing resources and giving them time more than the 1 minute or 2 minute comment at a meeting.
Okay.
But I don't know if I could vote for $4,200 for noise.
All right, and nothing changed in 2 and 3. Any comment? Okay. Being none, move into the usual 5 airline award program. That seems to be
Question.
Yeah.
And maybe Bert knows this. When I took my 2 noise 101 trainings, it was said that low frequency noise couldn't be mitigated. But I wonder if we started offering an award to airlines and or manufacturers that are working on reducing low frequency noise at departures. That's a carrot. I mean, it's a teeny weeny carrot, but it's a carrot.
I'm sorry, offering what?
An award for airlines and or Boeing, Whitney Bowes for working on reducing the low frequency noise on departure jet engines. It's another award if anybody is even out there doing that. Because in my trainings, it was, we can't mitigate it, therefore we won't mitigate it. He's looking like I sound like a crazy person.
I'm sorry, I was.
No.
Okay.
It was the previous
I'm
thing
sorry.
that I didn't have circled. I didn't have.
No, I mean, I don't see harm to that. But the question is anybody, are you aware of anyone? We could add it.
I have no idea, but it would be starting to say we're looking for those airlines, we're looking for those, and we want to celebrate.
You've got the CPUs and
Let me see.
Are you suggesting that we create another category of awards?
Yes.
Separate from the Fly Quiet program?
No, it could be a subset under Fly Quiet.
Okay, because I think Fly Quiet program is a somewhat structured program, and it's got an entity. It's an entity unto itself, and it's a partnership between the airport and the Roundtable. And its reason for living is to, well, as far as I'm concerned, come up with flight procedures, presumably at night, and asking them to fly those procedures that make a real impact. And so it's I like what your idea is. I just don't know that it should be Fly Quiet.
I hear what you're saying. I mean, to me, if we can't noise shift, and runway 1 is the major departure runways, but if there was a way to do a short 28 and curl right out over the bay without going anywhere near South City, that's a procedure that takes some of the nighttime weight off of the close-in communities, with an emphasis on departure noise instead of, well, I mean, Fly Quiet already rewards airlines for trying to leave before 10 p.m. Right. So it's just another way of looking at a reward system.
You're talking about research from Boeing.
Let me see what Bert has to say. Bert?
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair Handy. I was basically going to say that the airlines, the aircraft manufacturers, and the engine manufacturers are all working to reduce noise. Now, do they specifically target A-weighted or C-weighted? Not to my knowledge. They're mainly looking for the big picture.
Which in the environmental world is you spend your money on the biggest bang.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't get to the low length, the harder fruit, which is low frequency.
Mm-hmm. They may get it. It's just, if you're trying to reduce noise as a whole, you may get more A-weighted or you may get more C-weighted.
So where are we on this? We will not fit on
on this topic. Okay, so the work plan items under Bill 5, Airline Award Program. There were 2 very brief comments in the last years that didn't give a lot of meat to the topic, and I thought I would try to expand it just a little bit.
I'm gonna leave now because I've got to get to my other meeting. I looked through the rest of it. I don't really have any comments on the rest of it. On the budget, I am very happy that we're saving some reserves. So if studies or activities come up that require something, we have the extra funds to do it, and we'll leave it at that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Sorry, I gotta run out.
All right.
So basically, this recommendation just says that in light of all the new studies that have come out about the NES, the noise environmental studies, neighborhood environmental study, and the new civil aviation noise policy that we just spent the last meeting going over, that the roundtable, in collaboration with the technical consultant, will work with this SFO to evaluate the current components of the Fly Flyer program and propose modifications or deletions as appropriate to the current program, which is, it will tell me it's more than 15 years old, I think. And so, come up with some modifications to the current ones as needed and propose new ones that would include new technology such as GPS.
Thank you.
Okay. All right.
And number two, the Fly Quiet Awards program has been suspended during COVID. And I think Bert told me that this calendar year 23, we're on track for 87% of operations. I think something like that. At any rate, it's high, it's close enough to a normal kind of year that this might be the good calendar year to resumption of the, thank you. That's exactly.
Okay.
So
We're good on that? Perfect. Okay. Moving on to strategic goal number 6, address community concerns. Number 1, really, just roundtable actions and activities rather than successes, minor change in there. As far as number 2, expanding the reporting to make it periodically reported to the public, and roundtable action and updates. I think any concerns or that's straightforward. Number 3, analyze, monitor methodology. And then we added the verbiage collaborate with SFO Aircraft Noise Office, which is a great resource for us in that analysis and providing us the data. Suggest changes to SFO noise reporting publication, which we have and continue to do so. And that probably they have been using the ANIM in their reporting, and depending on what else we could find out, we could advocate for that. And as appropriate, make recommendations to local, state, and federal level. Any concerns or issues with that? Thank you. And moving on to number 7, improve roundtable effectiveness. This one here, we were about to conduct Noise 101. This is an update. We have conducted Noise 101, and we will be putting the video once it's complete, the editing by MCTV on the website for members of the roundtable and the public as well. They could view. For those who attended that was a pretty condensed meeting and with a lot of information that even those of us who attended will want to have to go back and review it. So I think that would be a good resource that would be available for all of us. And then instead of maintain a member packet, continue to update the new member packet for onboarding. That is it. That covers all of it. We're gonna dive into the budget, or is that something that I need to get into?
Yeah, I thought it's one
thing.
Yeah, this was so, I learned so much. I really appreciate your work.
Thank you so much.
And I appreciate your advocacy and all that you do and your knowledge. And thank you all so much.
Thank you. Any concerns over the budget or comments on the budget?
Concern, I saw surplus.
Okay.
It's the opposite of concern.
Okay.
It's
Excellent.
I was curious why. Is there some reason that it
there's
ballooned?
some historical reason, but I don't know enough about it to explain it to you. So we'll talk to you offline sometime.
So that sounds
Give you some
wonderful.
background on it.
Yes, that sounds wonderful.
Kathleen, you're halftime too, right?
Yes,
Yeah. And that's funded by the county.
that's the roundtable budget.
Is it?
It's
where you're at?
paid by the county,
Paid by
as
the
is
county.
Angela.
So
that's
included
under County of San Mateo Coordination Services. So
Thank you.
that's Angela and me.
I'm sorry, Sam, I got ahead of you. I apologize.
Okay, no problem. I mean, we all done really, unless, I don't have any questions on the budget.
I do want to raise an issue.
Oh, sure, I'm sorry.
I do think we're putting an awful lot of pressure on our staff. I mean, if you look at the letters we try to write, committees we try to run, I'm not suggesting we change the budget this year, but I think we do ask the county for additional assistance. Now we expand the staff, because if we are going to go to emissions, as well as everything in the lobbying efforts, going to get harder and harder, I think, and more time involvement with three Congress members. I think we need to give some thought as to whether or not we have enough, whether or not we're being fair to the staff by what we ask them to do. So we're overloading them. And should we have some discussion with the county over that?
Okay, is the county?
Kathleen is not doing half time. I know all the work she's doing.
I know county.
And I know Angela probably.
I know both of them are doing more than what they supposed to, hours and energy. But is that, I don't know the history. I don't know if Angela knows, or you might, or Ann might know. In the history, is the county supposed to carry the entire staffing cost, whether we increase it or not, or is it the membership after a certain threshold?
I would tell you there is a trend. Story. They're building a huge wind farm off Eureka. They're going to be building a whole new port. They are looking, instead of just mitigating the image, the damage, but looking at countywide community benefits. So if you look at SFO, and it was on Millbrae's land, unincorporated, so the county gave it away. And what the county got was gasoline tax, which is going down. And they got the hotel tax. So now with the Hilton back, they get that tax. I think it is well within our argument to say, hey, county, you're making money off SFO, and that money should come back to give staff adequate staffing, adequate consulting on things like that. And I think that's a perfect ask.
Good argument.
Can I just give you some background?
Sure.
And that is that the airport pays the bulk of our resources, of our income.
Yeah.
And we're on a contract which concludes with them next year. I think June 30th of next year. Yeah, if I'm not mistaken. So that will be, up for discussion. We have funds to adjust the staffing if you want to do it, and I don't believe it would take anything more than some kind of a document between the county and the roundtable to do that. I don't know if that's something you want to do. I doubt. I think it's maybe something to study rather than take any action on.
Well, we could probably, kind of explore it and kind of see how receptive the county is, and then based on that, we could figure out a plan how far to push and where to push and how to look at.
I don't really even think the county. They're not paying.
They're not paying.
They're conduit. It goes from the roundtable budget as a conduit through the county to paychecks by the county.
But they might also have just the right staffing. You virtualed the last UC Davis roundtable and the one on health, and it was an all-woman panel, several medical doctors all around the SeaTac airport. And the information they're getting on health on a range of issues. What if we had something like that? That was a pretty incredible, powerful session at UC Davis.
All right. My point is very simple. I think we're asking a lot out of staff, and if I look at the trend line, it's going to be even more and more. And I don't think it's fair to just keep piling onto them without providing additional time.
Yeah. So that's a discussion we as a roundtable are going to have. It might end up having to have multi sources enhancing your budget. It cannot be at one party, which will include the membership dues, annual dues. I don't know. I
will say the county is meeting yesterday, today, and tomorrow on their budget, and I was supposed to listen in. I might open my mouth, and I did follow. They had a 27-page agenda last week on Measure K. So there are Measure K funds that could fall. I always forget the county funding source exactly, but there could be funding in there. Yeah. And then we are giving you the support that you need.
No, we could definitely, that's something we should look into.
And it's regional. The thing about the airport is it impacts all of us on that. So to me, I had not thought about asking for Measure K funds, but once I looked at that list and said very little of it came North County, it's time.
I'm sorry. Apparently, Peter Grace has his hand raised. I'm not sure with regard to, is that?
Well,
I'm not sure, but we should have an open.
we're gonna open
public
public comment right after we have this discussion on both.
Thank you for reminding me that
Yeah.
as soon as we finish
Yeah,
the budget
yeah.
discussion.
I'm just getting you the in-kind numbers for Millbrae. So not expecting anything, but just so that you've got them for the budget.
So first of all, we appreciate Melbrae's hosting us and being so gracious and providing the facilities and the staffing at no charge. in kind service, so to speak. I looked at the one because I received your email. I looked at the previous budget. I didn't see any in the past.
Because we've been virtual. We had just started putting the in-kind budget in 2019, 2020, and then we went virtual.
I think that.
So it's just there. It's because we have to budget for it.
Sure.
And we have to rationale who we give for free and who not on there too.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Any issues about the budget again? I'm concerned. Okay, so I'm gonna close our discussion and go to public comments on that item. I don't see any members of the public here in the room. Angela, anyone on?
Yes, Mr. Peter Grace. So I will call Mr. Peter Grace.
To be honest, this is really hard. There are three questions I've got is why it may be difficult. It would really help for the document to define nighttime operations, whatever it is, whether it's FEA figures or our figures. Secondly, I was led to believe I would be able to understand and see who was on the call. I am unable, this has not happened as I've been watching for the last hour and a half. Is that possible to do? Thirdly, the current, and this really is following up on Darlene Yapley's comment, and that is, we all agree the current CNEL instrument is too blunt. And it doesn't show, for instance, it doesn't identify that 3 a.m. Amazon flight that wakes us up in Millbrae and Brisbane. And many of us have read the recent New York Times article dated 6/11/23 entitled, "Noise Could Take Years Off Your Life." And it specifically addresses noise response to transportation noise and fluctuating noise, as happens when a train passes or an aircraft flies overhead. Please consider putting in the work plan that the Roundtable needs to start using metrics in the director's report that combines both average noise and fluctuations. And please consider N above starting while Jean is disputing 45 dB. I'd like to see a figure which is a level that the citizens respond to. It is not something mandated by the airport. And also evaluated what is put on, what is used at other airports around the States and in Europe. And many of you ask, how hard is it to do this? SFO already has the data to present this metric that shows light on health effects. Also in the director's report, in the response to procedures used, when the STIX flights are overhead, A-weighted is a good proxy. However, when trucking or night hush is used, when the plane engines face back into Brisbane, A-weighted does not work and C-weighted needs to be used. So there needs to be some flexibility in the report. So we're actually capturing the effects of specific flights and can't use a general figure. Thank you very much. Thank you, Letty, for me going over the time.
Thank you, Mr. Grace.
Just shows how important that workshop will be.
Yeah.
We have no further hands raised.
Okay, thank you, Angela.
Jean, question.
Huh?
Can I ask Jean?
Yeah, sure.
Jean, with regard to Mr. Grace's comment about average noise and fluctuations, I presume DNL is our average noise. And do we have a measurement that could be taken today to determine the fluctuation noise that the Amazon 3 a.m. flight? Or
well,
not,
it's
a way to report on it today.
Well, they are capturing noise at all the noise monitoring stations, and to that extent, they can show other metrics such as what was the maximum noise level when the aircraft went over. And so that would be a very fluctuating aircraft noise. So there is some capabilities today, but I do think that it's worth having that discussion at the technical working group with Bert there to understand what capabilities they have and maybe be able to report out some of these other metrics.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So this is, any further discussion or comments? Are we in agreement then on the work plan to be, and the budget to be submitted to the August meeting for consideration?
Dumb question. Under the goal for GVN, as we dive into the assignments, if we find changes to the director's report, do we have that ability under the goals this year or for next fiscal year?
The ability to bring it to the vote of the roundtable?
Just to look at the director's report and see what data, you know, if we're going to look at a NEAM and weighted, I think it's going to point some changes to the director's report. If we look more specifically at GBN issues, can that also fit in there? And if we've got the language in there, great.
I think once we have our workshop and we identify metrics that's going to be helpful for us, we will definitely asking for them.
That may be a recommendation.
Yeah.
Okay, as long as we have that flexibility.
Yeah. All right, and with that, we'll come to the end of our meeting. Thank you everyone for attending. Thank you, Kathleen and Angela, and members of the public who attended and shared their comments. With that, we are adjourned.